Good morning. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Island of Hope. My name is Katalin Magyar. I'm the Director of Events at Island Innovation. I'd like to give you Nick Harry, the CEO of Climate Action, who can be thankful for to organize this conference.
Good morning, everybody. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Kata, for the introduction. Welcome to the Island of Hope, everyone. 3 days ago, there was nothing here, which gives us hope that things can happen quickly, and that's what we need more of right now. So, as a brief introduction, as Kata just said, I'm founder and CEO of Climate Action. This is our 15th year mobilizing innovation and action at COP, as it says in the brand name. So this year we're delighted to be launching the Island of Hope as our impact initiative. Last year, for those of you that were at COP, this is a big and very important and very relevant context and conversation, supporting the climate vulnerable communities and in the loss and damages context, the importance of supporting the small island states. So this is a really exciting partnership between Climate Action and Island Innovation to make this happen. And it wouldn't be happening without the support of Howden. So I'd like to thank David Howden and his team for your support in making this happen and the belief in our vision to make this happen. So we've got a full week of programming here, all 5 days. The whole innovation zone itself is 850 speakers over this week. So hopefully you will take time. Every single one of those speakers has got a speaker permit, and the logistics behind making this event happen have been quite considerable. So we hope to see all of you here for either round tables or cocktails, panels, dinners this evening. I think we've got 6 events happening this evening in one shape or form. So hopefully as many of you as possible will spend as much time here as possible after a weary walk around the blue and green zone to enjoy what we have in store for you here. So thank you so much for coming and for being part of this, and we really hope you'll push this out through your social media channels and talk to everyone about what is happening here in our ambition to place the small island states and the climate vulnerable regions right at the heart of the COP28. So I'd like to introduce James Elsmore, who's the CEO of Island Innovation, who's going to say a few words, and welcome to the stage, James. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Nick, and to all of the Climate Action team for this incredible venue. We're delighted to be the lead partner program partner on the Island of Hope stage. This is going to be a very exciting week, and thank you all of you for joining here, and especially Your Excellency, the President of Palau, for joining us to open this week's event. So, why islands? Islands are obviously the most vulnerable regions to the climate crisis, but as was alluded to, they also provide an opportunity for hope, to demonstrate what the future could look like, to be able to demonstrate solutions on renewable energy, waste management. All of the challenges that islands face are the challenges that the whole world faces. And so if we can solve them in island regions, we can solve them for the world. And that's why the Island of Hope resonated with us at Island Innovation so much as an opportunity to demonstrate the creativity and the innovation that comes from small island developing states and subnational island regions. And you'll be hearing over the course of the week from speakers from across the world, from the Arctic to the Scottish Islands, to the Caribbean, to the Pacific, Indian Ocean, and beyond. We at Island Innovation, we are a global network and a sustainable development consultancy who focus on bringing islands together and sharing these stories between islands, as we will this week. Obviously, we know that Tasmania, the Maldives, Jamaica, and Greenland are all very different, but the challenges that they face in terms of the climate crisis and beyond for sustainable development are very much the same. And so we will look forward to seeing those sessions today. Now, it is my great honor to welcome to the stage His Excellency Saranjo Whips, the President of Palau, to open this event and on behalf of the Republic of Palau as well. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Ali, and a very good morning, fellow advocates for our planet's future. You know, standing here today at this first inaugural session of the Island for Hope event on the margin of the COP, I really want to extend my gratitude to Island Innovation and Climate Action for their steadfast commitment and for inviting me to share Palau's perspective. So as we convene at this juncture, poised between the daunting challenges of unprecedented possibilities, I really anticipate a highly engaging discussions on this platform. You know, the Island of Hope series, event serves as a testament to our collective determination to confront our greatest shared adversary, climate change. So this event, of course, will talk about diverse themes of climate action and adaptation technology, youth inclusion, sustainable tourism, that really encapsulates the essence of collaboration, innovation, imperative that for fortifying our resilience and safeguarding our planet's future. Just last week, I was here at this venue and attending the World Green Economy Organization Summit. And the one word that we talked about then was hope, and what there is out there for us as islands and the challenges that we face. Today this COP that we're at is, I think, the largest attended COP ever. And I guess the question that we have is, does that mean that there's more hope when there's more people here? I sure hope so, because we need to mobilize action. This COP should be about uniting to act and deliver, and sharing those solutions. You know, one of the things that when I was here last week, I got to meet with two groups. One was the UAE, and they were sharing about their 2 gigawatt solar field that they were opening, and the agreement that they had signed would be producing energy at 1.38 cents a kilowatt. Now, for an island where it's 30 cents a kilowatt, you know, that seems pretty simple to just transition, right? And I was listening to our friends from Solomon Islands that say they're paying 85 cents a kilowatt. So there's opportunities out there that we can win together. And it's about sharing those opportunities. The Saudis' Aqua Power was sharing that they had a totally off-grid system that they just installed that was at 8 cents a kilowatt. So that gives us hope. But a lot of times we need the political will and people wanting to make that change. You know, the climate crisis really burdens small island states more than anybody else. We live it. We like to say this is what we do every day. We have our sea level rise inundating our crops. We have storms destroying our homes. We have heat that is killing our reefs and our corals and our fish. And not only that, eroding our coastlines and flooding our islands, risking the loss of our culture and our heritage. So it's important that we use innovative ideas to make the changes we need to make. The global stocktake was clear. We're not headed toward 1.5, we're headed to 3 degrees. And my understanding is that means some of our islands will be 8 feet underwater. And that means I have 2 chiefs with me here, and one of them is from those other islands, and he's a chief, but he's also a representative of our parliament. And and his title is tied to his land. If his land is gone, is he still a chief? You know, that's a question to ask. Or if our islands are all gone, are we still nations? Or are we just a part of Arkansas? I don't know. It's a lot of our islands with people move to Arkansas or moving to Australia. And should our kids have to read about our islands and our culture in textbooks like they read about dinosaurs? We all need to do our part. And this really requires collective, collaborative efforts on everyone. In our recent national statement, we proudly stood by Tuvalu, Vanuatu, and in advocating for a fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty. I mean, we cannot talk about addressing climate change if we don't talk about energy transition and putting an end to fossil fuels, because we know that's what's putting us under. There is an ancient practice that we always like to share that we do in Palau, and that really is something that has allowed us to live sustainably for thousands of years, and that is the practice of a bull. And when we practice a bull in Palau, the chiefs, they get together and they say, we have overfished this area, we've taken too much, we need to pause, stop, let that area rejuvenate and get back to where it was. And I want to share just something that, Palau we've gone through recently, and that's about 40 years ago. I was a young boy, and when I was young, my father had decided to quit his job because he knew he could make more from fishing. So he went back to fishing instead of managing a copra plant. And when he was fishing, one of the things that we would fish for is the bumphead parrotfish. And that time scuba tanks had just been introduced, so you could harvest them in mass and export them in mass, and it was a good living. Also, the people loved to eat them, right? So, but it wasn't sustainable. And so years later, my father became a congressman. He passed a law to ban using scuba tanks to fish because that's an unsustainable practice. But then even years later, because they were still being over-harvested, there was another law passed in 2007 that banned the taking of these parrotfish. 16 years later, one of the most unique dive sites in the world in Palau is watching these bumphead parrotfish spawn. And we call them the Palauan fireworks because when they're spawning, there's thousands of them that come together for this spawning. But if you ever watch these fish underwater, they'll come along. There was this cloud of white coming out of them. And what they're doing is, if you listen to them, they're crushing coral. And we now know that each one of those fish produces 5.5 tons of sand a year, which is also critical for rebuilding the islands and keeping them above water. So, it's using nature-based solutions that also help solve our climate crisis. We also know that we have to understand nature has its limits, and we have to use the wisdom of the past to apply today to protect the world that we live in. There's no question that our culture is interwoven with our land and our sea. In Palau, we call the land our mother and the ocean our father. And of course, today we need to act as a global community to do all we can to keep 1.5 alive. Another thing that we did in Palau 20 years ago is we started what we call the Palau Protected Areas Network. And that was in response to what we call the Micronesian Challenge, which was to protect 30% of all near-shore coastal resources, mangroves, coral reefs, because we know they're so critical to sequestering carbon, to of protecting biodiversity. And from that point, Palau has taken a further step to protect its EEZ. And at this COP, yesterday, we were able to announce, along with our Pacific brothers and sisters, the largest managed protected area on the planet. To be exact, it's 1.5 times the size of Africa, 44 million square kilometers of area, because we believe in the fact that a healthy ocean means a healthy planet. Every second breath we take comes because of the ocean. And it's important for us to work together to protect our oceans, but to use them sustainably and to really balance production with protection. So yesterday's initiative, which was unlocking blue Pacific prosperity, was an important point in showing united action to deliver. And it was an opportunity for Pacific countries to act and have our partners join in that. So yesterday, we were very fortunate that the Bezos Earth Foundation committed $100 million to begin this effort. Also, the Global Environmental Facility committed another $125 million. And of course, we're hoping to grow and expand that, because we need to find all the different ways we can to solve our problem. That includes using nature to solve our climate crisis. But we know that a healthy ocean ensures that we have a healthy planet, and that includes healthy food. And so that's why it's so important to protect our oceans, because we need healthy fish, healthy sea life that we can continue to use. In Palau, we have we always use sayings and stories, and one of the stories that's told in Palau is about the two-headed eel from Irai. And this two-headed eel lived in a rock, and he was always, as he grew, he was always trying to get food. So unfortunately, it had two heads, so one head would be chasing this way and the other would be chasing that way. And it was getting skinnier and skinnier. It was on the point of starvation, until it realized that it had one body. And when it realized it had one body and they were working together, of course it began to thrive and survive. And that reminds us of we live on one planet. We've got to be working together. Today, I'm wearing a shirt, and this shirt that I'm wearing, we had it at our Oceans Conference that we held in Palau in 2022, is made from recycled plastic bottles. In fact, plastic bottles that washed up on our shores in Palau, because unfortunately, plastic pollution is something that plagues everyone. But it's things like having a recycling program that has fees, so redemption fees. So when you turn in the plastic bottles, you can collect them and then use them. Now, I like the fact that at this conference we're using a lot more glass, because we really need to eliminate the use of plastic. But we've got to find ways to use what we have and turn it into something that's useful. At Palau, our recycling facility now, we turn glass into blown glass figures. We make coconuts and stingrays and turtles and all kinds of things. But it takes innovation. It takes the determination to take what is bad and turn it into good. And that requires all of us, because, it's hard for us to break those bad habits. I mean, we're addicted to fossil fuels. We can't seem to get away from it. And that's why we need to do all we can to make those tough choices. And sometimes it's going to cost us a little more. But that's a sacrifice that we have to make, because we share one body. We share one planet. And what you do in this room, what we do in our individual countries affects everybody else. We don't live on separate planets. We don't have a choice. We all share this planet. So we're looking forward to today to hear all those great ideas and how we can innovate and do better. You know, yesterday I had the opportunity of going to the Museum of Our Future here in Dubai, and what an inspiring place. But also inspiring what Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum had to say. And he said, we won't live for hundreds of years, but the products or creativity can leave a legacy after we are gone. The question is, what legacy are we going to leave behind? Islands disappearing? The future, and he says, the future will be for those who will be able to imagine, design, and build. The future doesn't wait. The future can be designed and built today. And the secret of renewal of life, the development of civilization, and the progress of humanity is one word: innovation. And that's why I think we're here today. Is it's all about innovation. So in Palau, one of our latest projects is we're working with partners to plant seaweed so we can turn them into utensils, so we can get rid of the plastic forks. So as Walt Disney said, if you can dream it, you can do it. So we in the Pacific dream of a world where our children can grow up in a healthy environment and live on their islands forever and not have to leave. Together with a united purpose and action, we possess the unparalleled strength to deliver below 1.5. Our actions today must shape a legacy of hope for our generations to come. Thank you for your unwavering commitment for a sustainable future for all. We are sovereign, but we need to be united. And we are resilient, and together we shall prevail. Thank you. God bless you all. Bismillah.
Good morning. It's a great privilege to be here on Island of Hope. I think that hope, in a way, also comes when people feel empowered, where they feel they have an opportunity to take control of their destiny in their life. And I think, you heard a lot of that from His Excellency about having hope about what the future maintains. And what I'm going to talk to you today a little about is about that empowerment. I spent 40 years working in an industry, the insurance industry, which when presented with a risk, tries to understand really a couple of things. First of all, what can we do about that risk? How can we protect against that risk? But also, it's not just the protection against the risk. It's how by removing that risk or taking it away, we empower investment. And that is really, really critical. I think, for me, COP26 in Glasgow was my first COP, like so many of us actually in the business community. I think it was known as the business COP. But I was struck there, I'm sure like so many of us, by Mia Motley's words in that very impassioned speech she gave. Two things really stood out to me that. First was, who's going to protect these vulnerable communities? Like you've just heard His Excellency talk about, who's going to protect those vulnerable communities, against the climate change that is predominantly being caused by the people who are currently not going to be most affected by it? That was the question. And the second thing was a call to arms for the private sector. What are we going to do about it? How are we going to help that investment to give people hope for their future? So, COP26. Then last year, those of us who were in Egypt, what do we have? Of course, we had the huge announcement about the potential to create the Loss and Damage Fund to deal with the question that had been asked at COP26. Who is going to pay? And that was very exciting. And it got me sort of thinking about really two things. Where is the role of the private sector in this? Mere question again. And critically, how are we going to invest, not just protect, but how are we going to unlock investment for the future? There's a funny belief for some reason, I'm not quite sure why, that actually climate risks for the vulnerable, particularly in the global south, are not insurable. They certainly aren't insured predominantly, but they're not insurable. That's not actually correct. That is not the problem. The problem is that actually who's going to pay for it? Not that they're not insurable, it's where is the funding? Where's the investment? Let's call it investment, not funding. Where's the investment going to come to be able to provide that protection? That's the question, not whether they're insurable or not. What's the answer to that, in my view? Of course, the Loss and Damage Fund has the power to unlock that. So, reflecting on COP27, and the questioners I asked was, has anyone actually modelled these risks? Has anyone actually modelled what these risks are? And then if you model it, worked out actually what investment might be needed to protect those risks? The answer, of course, was no. No one had done that. So we asked Cambridge University to conduct a study, to do those things, to work out what are the risks and what would be the cost. But we wanted to do one thing that's very different. Most of what we spend our time doing is looking at assets and the value of those assets and the damage to those assets. What we wanted to look at about investment for the future was looking at what the effect would be on countries' GDP. Looking at a different way round, about that investment way round. Not about assets, but about the GDP. And this is a very important shift, because if you think about it, even if you're an investor, if you own a manufacturing plant or a hotel, you can insure that maybe, but what's the value of that if the country or the island that you're in loses its infrastructure, loses its airport, loses its ports, loses its hospital? Actually, that doesn't really help you. So to really deal with this, you've got to look at the true value of the economic loss from these disasters, from ever-increasing climate change. Understanding the risk to the entire economy, not an individual asset. By that way, we were able to calculate the cost of contractual guarantee to pre-agreed finance. Contractual guarantee to pre-agreed finance. What would that cost? Well, looking at that contractual guarantee was interesting. We found that actually many economies were in danger of having their whole GDP wiped out. And there's two sides to this contractual guarantee. The first is, okay, it's about the damage, dealing with that, bringing the money in. But the second of this coin, this powerful coin, of course, is actually around investment. If you know that when something happens, there's going to be money to rectify it, you're much more likely to invest, either as a country or as a government or as an investor, than if you think actually there's nothing there to rebuild afterwards. So there's two sides to that coin. What did the research tell us? What did we find out? Well, as I said earlier, actually a huge number of these 100 most vulnerable countries had risk of over 100%, 100% of their GDP being potentially lost by increasing disasters due very often to climate change. The very thing, the very question we were asked back by Mia Mottley in COP26. Who's going to pay for that? Look at that cost, 100% or more of GDP. Imagine if you're running a country, being able to sustain that. If there's no funding coming in the event that happened. So what we did, we worked out, okay, we know now how bad the problem is. What would it cost to cap that loss to something like 10% of GDP? What would that cost? Would that be affordable? Well, the answer was it costs rather less than we thought. We found that actually a $1 billion investment, which remember is just 1% of the 100 billion that is expected in the loss and damage fund, would provide 75 billion of protection. Quite an enormous magnitude. 1 billion for 75 billion to protection. And we also demonstrated how this could be scaled critically, because as we know it's about scaling, to protect all 100 of the most vulnerable countries that could well be the recipients of the loss and damage fund. This is the most powerful economically way to use the donor money. Why do I say that? Why do I say that? Well, if you think about it, if you are waiting for funding, very often it's about, has it reached the media attention, you know? And how long is that going to take? This, remember, is a contractual guarantee to pre-agreed financing, not a hope that someone's going to bail you out. It's non-political, you know? It's guaranteed. It's going there. It's not about decision where it's going to go. Let me just give you, an example to think about. In January of this year, the UN amazingly raised $9 billion for Pakistan following the devastating floods that happened last year. An amazing achievement. But it was months after the floods had happened. And I was on a panel the other day, and someone told me, well, actually, David, not only was it months after, that actually not very much of that 9 billion has actually arrived. How much better would it have been if there had been a contractual entitlement to pre-agreed finance for that? Think about that. And we all know, there's an industry, that actually $1 of funding pre a disaster is probably worth about 6 post a disaster. In a world that is more volatile, you can't really, in my view, put a price on certainty. The poorest and the most vulnerable have no safety net. For billions of people, actually a disaster not only is about losing their homes and, of course, very often their livelihoods, but it is about losing their very income. There is nothing to rebuild with afterwards. So, if you get pre-agreed financing, not only does it protect against the disaster, but it also provides hope and empowerment for the future. And it allows private investors, governments, anyone, to invest with confidence. We all know of that, Think about that very often with your own assets, You're only going to put money in when you have confidence. That's our job very often, to take risks off the balance sheet that banks, investors, private equity houses don't want. And when those risks are taken off the balance sheet, what happens? The money flows. Sadly, as we've heard all too clearly, everything points to climate change getting worse long before it gets better. But the economic impact on those worst hit need not. There doesn't have to be a direct correlation. Capping the potential losses at 10% of GDP with guaranteed pre-agreed financing gives the countries, the people, and investors the confidence to invest. And we have put a price on that. So, I'm going to end with 3 asks. The first is we want to work with the vulnerable islands, the vulnerable countries, to actually understand how we would put this into action and where the priorities are. That's the first thing. Who actually needs this and how is it going to work? The second, I want to engage with private finance to work out how we get involved, how we can help in this, that call to arms, because this is about investment. This is all about investing for a better future. And thirdly, of course, we need to engage with the donor countries for them to understand why this is so valuable and critically so empowering for those countries that are going to suffer the most from climate change, but were not the ones that caused it in the first place. If we do this now, I really believe that we can transform how we prepare and protect the most vulnerable against the devastating effects of climate change. And this is critical, give everyone a hope and a chance for a better future. If we were to achieve that, that would be rather a nice legacy for COP28. Thank you.